All right. So recently, there's been a lot of talk about players that we need to get rid of at Manchester United. Players that are either too old, players that have been at the club too long, players that are always consistently injured, and basically players that just don't fit the club, players that need to leave. Now, I want to speak about Andre Onana. All right, because Andre Onana is a classic Manchester United signing of a player that we got that we just didn't need. Welcome back to another episode of the Glory Reds podcast, and I want to focus on Andre Onana because right now I think we have reached the point where we have officially made our minds up that he is just not the player for us among all the other players that need to leave in this upcoming summer window. And when I think of Andre Onana, it makes me think of the time when we got rid of David De Gea, right? We got rid of David De Gea. We didn't renew his contract. And it puzzled me so much during that time. And one of the main conversations around that topic was it Ten Hag's decision? Was it a decision from the board? What was the real reason of getting rid of David De Gea? Because it actually didn't make any sense. And look, I know this video is about Andre Onana, but I want to talk a little bit about David De Gea because David De Gea is a tale of two stories. When he first came into the club, I remember this very vividly. David De Gea comes to replace Edwin van der Sar, and you're looking at this kid, very young, coming from Atletico Madrid, and you're thinking to yourself, is he capable of stepping into this team? And remember at that time, yeah, yes, it was an aging team and it was reaching its end of life, and it did really need a lot of rejuvenation. But he was still coming into a very established Manchester United squad, a squad that was excelling on all fronts. You couldn't doubt Manchester United's performance and its stature at that point in history. David De Gea comes into the club, very young player, gets thrown into the first team, and he's there to show his worth. Now, albeit in his first season, didn't really have the best of performances. I was amongst the many. I'm not even gonna lie to anyone over here. I was like, get this kid out of our club. You know, Back then United had very high standards. When players would come in, we would expect so much from them. And if they didn't deliver, then they were just not cut out for the team. We really never had this culture of give him time. It's his first season. Let's see how things go. Cutthroat mentality at Manchester United. And that's something that we have lost over the years at this club. So anyway, David De Gea comes to the club, doesn't really have a great first season, starts showing signs of improvement in his second season, and then as the story goes, he just develops into his game. He really came in as a very scrawny person. He wasn't really built like a goalkeeper. His physicality was brought into question a lot of the time, but it didn't take long for him to find his feet and really establish himself in that Manchester United team. Now, why am I bringing this up? You're probably asking yourself, okay, look, this is supposed to be about Andre Onana. Why are you talking about David De Gea? Now, I always make this comparison. And the reason why this comparison is very important is because when David De Gea came to Manchester United, he was relatively still new. He was young. He was a very young, unexperienced player in the football world. All right. He was still a developing player. He was still finding his feet. He was still um, establishing himself. All right. When you look at Andre Onana has played at a lot of big clubs. All right. Andre Onana has had a very, distinct career. So when he came to Manchester United, he didn't come under the same circumstances as David De Gea. He came to Manchester United as a proven first team goalkeeper with experiences under his belt. Goalkeeping for his national team, goalkeeping at Inter Milan, very pivotal for them in the Champions League. He was ready. He was an experienced goalkeeper that we expected him to come into the side and just kick things off straight off the bat, right? And we could bring some other elements into question. For example, like, oh, but did David De Gea have a good defensive structure around him, right? Now, like I said, when you're looking at David De Gea coming into Manchester United, the team was reaching an end of an era, right? The defenders were just not as prolific as they used to be when you look at the likes of Rio Ferdinand, um, Patrice Evra, Vidic, etc. They were coming to the end of their career. And we all know that after that back line left, Manchester went through so many years trying to develop our defense, right? And it's only up until now we're actually sort of getting it right. We've actually sort of somehow built a solid defense. We have gone through so many defenders, most of them I can't even remember their names. So it's only now that we've had a very solid defense that can actually help the keeper shine, right? So you can argue, you can sort of put up an argument that, you know, Andre Onana coming into this team has had a very good defensive line to help him do his job better. But has he? That's the question. Has Onana delivered on what we brought him in to do? So we get rid of David De Gea, right? And the premise behind getting rid of David De Gea is because, oh, David De Gea, um, he's not a long ball player like Andre Onana. His stats are better. Andre Onana is a sweeper keeper. Andre Onana, is a 12th player on the pitch. We were sold so many dreams about Andre Onana. Now you can argue the fact to say, okay, fine, maybe the previous manager under him was playing towards his strength, and maybe when he came to Manchester United, that wasn't really the case. But still, we still haven't seen the qualities in which we were sold about Andre Onana. We still haven't yet seen what Andre Onana can bring to the table. Because in these past 2 seasons, honestly, I haven't seen any major improvements from Andre Onana. And remember, he is a more established goalkeeper coming into this setup than David De Gea. David De Gea left big shoes to be filled, and they haven't been filled yet. And it's a big concern right now. Andre Onana, 28 years old, 91 appearances, 22 clean sheets. 22 clean sheets. Let that sit in. Let that sink in. His goalkeeping stats are abysmal, and they are backed. In football, we talk about this thing, stats doesn't tell the whole picture. You need to watch the match, because you look at the stats and you'll be like, wow, how did this team lose? You'll find on the stats, this team had, 60, 70% ball possession. They had 22 shots on goal, you know, um, they had whatever, the stats just go on for days. They had 20 corner kicks, all of this, all of that, but you'll find that's the team that actually lost. And you'll find like what the actual happened, right? And then you watch the game and you realize that possession was not um productive possession. Maybe they played too many sideways football. They were not commanding with their attack. They never created any good chances. And you find the lesser team, when they had the little possession that they had, they made the most of it, right? So Andre Onana's stats back his performance at Manchester United. You look at these stats and you go back to this season, right? I know this season hasn't yet come to an end, but you go back to the beginning of this season up until this point. You go back to last season, you look at the stats and they track. His goalkeeping is very questionable because despite everything else he can do outside of goalkeeping, first and foremost, you are a goalkeeper. You need to be good at what your position requires you to do, what your position requires you to be, right? You look at the way he defends, short stops or long range shots or even corner kicks. And you'd ask yourself, like, does this guy honestly know the basics of goalkeeping? And I'm not a goalkeeper myself, but in some situations you'll be asking yourself, like, wow, why did he actually do that? If I was in the goalpost, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done something different. But like I said, it's sometimes you look at these things and you ask yourself, surely, right? The coaches, the people who are behind him, the people who are going through and training and everything like that, are they picking these things up? Are they teaching him or telling him that, look, you need to be standing in certain positions? You need to be articulating your body, whatever, to make certain sorts of saves and stuff like that. You can't keep punching the ball back to the opposition to give them a second chance at goal. You need to be goalkeeping in a certain way. We are not seeing that development. With David De Gea, you saw that development throughout his career. And like I said, he came in as a sponge, as a young buck, learning and establishing himself as a goalkeeper. But Andre Onana has come into this side as an established goalkeeper. Surely, during this time, you should have learned all those things and you should know what to do in certain situations. So clearly, just from how he's performing right now, we can easily assume that that's his ceiling. He has reached it. He's not getting any better than that, and that's just it for Andre Onana. Do we still keep him moving forward? Was there any need to get rid of David De Gea? His stats just don't make sense. They don't make sense in the direction in which we are going. He has failed us on multiple occasions. Now, I can't completely put the blame on him because our defense has also been very questionable this season, and I'll reserve that talk for another time. But right now, we're talking about Andre Onana and why he needs to leave Manchester United at the end of the season. All right. Number one, like I said, his stats are poor. Right. And we all know how pivotal goalkeepers' roles play in a team, especially in the Premier League. An easy example is Liverpool. Look at Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp came to Liverpool, right? Went all the way to the final with Liverpool, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it was the final. I don't think it was semi-final, whatever, where they got beat by, I think it was Real Madrid, and they had that keeper. I think it was Mignolet or whatever. Appalling, appalling. Jurgen Klopp did not waste time. He got rid of him, brought in a different keeper, and that was literally the difference. Pep Guardiola comes to City, didn't even wait a season. He already knew what he wanted. And in all fairness, obviously he came before the start of the season. Ruben Amorim has come mid-season. Not so much he can do in that regard. Pep Guardiola comes, says, "Look, I don't need Joe Hart. I've got a keeper in mind, and this is the keeper that I need." And this said comes in, does his thing, proves himself. Away he goes. You know, top managers, top clubs don't waste time, cutthroat, ruthless, do what they need to do. And that's what we need to do at Manchester United. Now, I know right now everybody's upset with Sir Jim and Ineos Group, and rightfully so. I am as well. But the one thing that I admire about them is how cutthroat they are. But in those cutthroat decisions, they need to make sure they do not repeat the same mistakes as the previous regime. They need to do their homework thoroughly. They need to make sure that whoever is going to come and replace this person is going to be an adequate replacement. And we're not going to go through season after season just bringing in and out players, regretting our decision, keeping them at the club for who knows how long, until their contracts expire. Because right now we have a lot of players on this team sheet that do not want to leave the club. They don't, and they have the right to say no. And now we are stuck on these big contract players that we can't get rid of, and we have to endure through it until their contracts expire. And we're most likely not even going to be able to move them on to bring back money back into the club and go and buy out again. So yeah, it's this season, last season, it's been horrendous. We brought in Altai Banyinda, and you know what? To be honest with you, I'd honestly prefer Altai Banyinda at this point. And look, I get Andre Onana in some regard is a better keeper than Altai Banyinda, but he definitely seems like he's got the basics of goalkeeping on lock. And I think just that alone will be suffice. Ben says we're going to finish in the top 10. He has this strong belief that Manchester United will finish in the top 10. Manchester United will not finish in the top 10 as long as much goes Andre Onana is behind that goalpost. Promise you. It's not happening. If there's any hope of Manchester United finishing in the top 10, drop Andre Onana now. Obviously, that's not a good idea. You want him playing, you want his value in the market, to sort of, be good, because, we don't know what he can do. For instance, he keeps a clean sheet until then the season, who knows? But, unfortunately, we have to keep playing him. But here's the big question. All right, moving on to my second point of why we have to move Andre Onana. I don't know if this is more of a point or a question, but will Amarin make that decision? And if he makes that decision, who is actually in line to succeed Andre Onana? Because clearly this was a failed experiment, right? So more to point number two, why we need to get rid of him, because that was more of a question or a statement. But moving on to point number two, Andre Onana was brought in by Eric Ten Hag, right? That was part of Andre Onana was part of Eric Ten Hag's plan in the type of football that he wanted to play. When you look at Eric Ten Hag's style of play and when you look at Ruben Amorim's style of play, they're completely different, right? And I think that completely nullifies the attributes of Andre Onana, and they don't make sense in this setup. And so, if his style of play doesn't make sense in this setup, which leaves him to default back to just doing goalkeeping stuff, which he's clearly not excelling in. So it's like, what do we do with you now? So Ruben Amorim needs to make an executive decision, and I really hope he does it because I trust him to do it. To get rid of Andre Onana and bring in a true successor to David De Gea, because Andre Onana was just not the keeper we asked for. And unfortunately, it just is what it is. This is not a smear campaign. I don't hate Andre Onana. I'm sure he's a really good guy. You know what I mean? But like they say, it's business. You know what I mean? It's business. We have a vision. We know where we need to get to, right? And Andre Onana is not going to help us to get to where we need to be. So unfortunately, he just has to leave the club. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Right? What do you guys honestly think about Andre Onana? Because personally, apart from, or let me just say, when you look at other players and other stuff that's happening in Manchester United, there's a lot of split opinions, right? The new stadium, Jadon Sancho, Mason Mount, Mason Greenwood, you know what I mean? Split opinions. But with Andre Onana, it's so weird because I haven't heard any single Manchester United fan say, you know what, he's not bad. Let's keep him around. You never know what could happen. Nah, guys. Nah. He's 28 years old. He's not the one. If he was the one, he would have proven to us long time ago that he's the one. But I could be wrong. So I'm leaving it in your hands. You tell me, is there anyone out there with a split opinion? Convince me, you know? Put your comments in the comment section down below and convince me otherwise. Let me see your logic, you know? The way Ben used to gun down at me and say, D, I want to understand your logic or your understanding about Ineos and Sir Jim, and why do you think that they may be good for the club? And ultimately, I was proven wrong, you know. And I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say, nah, I was proven wrong, right? They disappointed me. I honestly thought that it was gonna be different, but it clearly wasn't. And so with the Anjo Nana thing, I believe it the same way. I just don't see anything good coming out of Andre Onana moving forward. So I leave it to you guys. Leave your comments in the description down below. But anyway, guys, thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Glory Reds podcast. We are back on Spotify. Link will be in the description down below. audio version, video version. You can listen to it on your way to work, gym, workout, whatever. We're back on Spotify. We're gonna be uploading daily content. But with that being said, catch you guys in the next one. Peace.